It's 7:10 now to happier news, and the 12 boys and their coach who were rescued from a flooded cave network in northern Thailand are all in good health, according to Thai officials. The group spent more than 2 weeks trapped underground. They're now being kept in isolation at a hospital in the city of Chiang Rai, where they're being monitored for possible infections. That's the big worry. These were the scenes last night as rescue divers left the cave complex at the end of an extraordinary and hugely successful 3 days. The complexity and danger of the rescue mission is hard to overstate, really, but rescuers felt they had no alternative, given the weather forecaster was saying that there was going to be more torrential rain with more water flooding into the cave network where the boys were trapped. So let's talk about how they actually managed to pull this off. We're joined from Dundee by Andrew Watson from the UK Mines Rescue Service, who's been involved with many underground rescue missions. Andrew, nice to have you with us this morning.
Good morning.
Just how extraordinary is this feat, this particular rescue?
I think you describe it very well as to the really extreme end of being extraordinary. The amount of planning that went into that, and I also think that when you add in the time constraint to make this happen, to make this a success. And when we say success, I think we always have to remember that one of the rescue workers died during this, but to actually achieve what they've achieved under the pressure of a time constraint is remarkable. Indeed, yes, and he's a national hero. Not that is a great deal of consolation, of course, for someone losing their life, but to do so in such a noble attempt to rescue children trapped in these horrible conditions is something I think that his country and his family are never going to forget. But certainly for an experienced diver, a former Navy SEAL, to lose his life just shows how dangerous this was for the children who had absolutely no experience at all, and some of whom couldn't even swim when they started. And again, that's exactly correct. But I think that the whole concept of being underground, being trapped underground, people who are claustrophobic will realise, and I'm sure we're thinking about, that there are certainly better places to be, if I put it that way. And again, from everyone involved, from the divers themselves to the volunteers who are helping, and from my point of view, to especially the decision makers, such an amazing feat to achieve the end result. And as I say, such an emotion right round the world, and such support from right round the world, to end up in tinged with a bit of sadness, but a remarkable result.
Andrew, I mean, how much of this would have been familiar territory to these divers? Because they are cave and mine rescuers, so they would have done things like this before. But how much is beyond and out of their comfort zone? I think the people who are going into the caves, it's not particularly for the sightseeing, it's for the exploration. And I think the unusual or the strange bit and out of the comfort zone bit is the children being involved. And that's everything from the equipment, getting the equipment that was suitable for children, and also designing how they were actually going to transport them out of there. Add to that the way they transported the children out added to the workload of the divers themselves. And I mean, that's the unknown bit of this, to actually sit down, plan this, do it, and see it done and see the end result. I can't praise them enough. And some very difficult decisions to make along the way. I mean, not least to go ahead with this in the first place, which, you know, we heard from the Thai authorities saying, actually, we just had no choice. We had to do it, given what the weather forecast was. But who do you take out first? How large a group do you attempt to rescue every day? You know, these sorts of practical decisions. I think, I think the man that gets most of the praise is the man that made the decision that now was the time, although if they're saying that decision was actually taken away from him, then he's probably in a better position because of that. But if you then look at the way they were dealing with the families themselves, there seemed to be mild criticism that they weren't telling the families who had been released, etc.
But from a family point of view, how would you have felt if someone came along and said, your son's coming out first or your son's coming out last? They might have broke down and had an effect on the family as a group. So I think ultimately they did the right thing by just bringing the children out as the risk assessment said they should be brought out.
And just in terms of the logistics of it, I mean, lots of people will have seen on the news the replica of what these caves look like, and the narrowness at one point, just 15 inches to squeeze through. You know, you couldn't even keep the oxygen tank on your back as an experienced diver at that point. The mind boggles really for those of us who have no experience of this sort of thing, how you cope with children who've already had a traumatic experience being taken through this.
I think from a mind rescue point, that is one of the things we practice every year. We make sure all of our rescue operatives can actually do that, take the breathing apparatus. But we're talking about adults that are used with that environment. To actually sit down and take the time and explain to children that that's going to happen, to practice for that, which I assume they did before they got to the point of actually doing it, and then to bring the children through that successfully. And again, I think that's what we said right at the start. They need to plan this well. They need to take as much time as they possibly can to rehearse, to practice, to make sure this can be done before they did it. And obviously that goes back to the gentleman that made the decision. Now is the time. Make sure we have rehearsed, planned, etc. Then do it. And obviously they did it well.
They did indeed. Andrew, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Watson there from the UK Mines Rescue Service, and great to see it's such an international effort with it as well.
And is this right? I read that some of the boys couldn't even swim,
That's right,
let alone dive.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, we're off to Croatia next.